my perspective, the artists who are working in this region today are among some of the most interesting artists working anywhere. And while one can localize the region, in fact, what's interesting is that they are artists and that their art can stand up and engage with art from anywhere else in the world. I mean, I come here not to see what I know, but to engage with what I don't know.
The role of contemporary art is to keep asking questions, because the more we ask questions, the more we search for answers, and that's the way civilization happens. Well, because of the attention those art fairs are bringing to the art scene from the area in general, Saudi art has been taking a great share of that. We need to develop on two or three aspects. I think more art schools, more museums, more institute, more social initiative, local civil society initiatives to support the art. Not only the governmental sort of direction of depending on the government to do everything. I think art should stay dynamic and more involved.
The history of the gallery goes back to more than 20 years in the Gulf, but also it started in Syria as a small bookstore in the late 80s, where two sisters decided to open up the first bookstore. Fast forward to 1995, when my family moved to Dubai, and my mother opened one of the first galleries. I mean, it was the second gallery to open in Dubai, but the first to really focus on Arab art.
For coming from Iran and observing Dubai as a city, you learn to admire the city because it's no longer a city, it is a university. It's a city to learn how over 200 nations and over 50 religions and confessions can live next to each other. And what is the common denominator of all of them is art and culture. Al Sarkal Avenue, for example, the expansion, the phase number 2, you see what they can create as a private person, as a patron. And when you look at the Emirati artists, because your question before was milestone, what I see is the rise of Emirati artists that they are coming now, and some of them brilliant, fresh, interesting, dynamic.
More institutional support, which I think is really important in terms of the long term of things, because the market is obviously relevant, but ultimately what leaves a legacy for everyone, artists, patrons, are museums. And I think that that's amazing to see that all important institutions now, from the Tate to the Guggenheim, all have a board for Middle Eastern and North African acquisitions. I think the institutional part is really relevant because that is what establishes the solid foundation. Markets are volatile.
What would you like to see happen in the next few years that you haven't already seen or witnessed in the past 10?
More and more catalog resumes, just to make sure that the legacy is there, because we're making art history.
I think the Palestinian art still needs to be taken into consideration by institutions, art institutions all around the world, and also museums. In Palestine, we're talking about Nabil Anani, Suleiman Mansour, and those two artists are established. Now we're working on young artists.
It's clear that people are interested in art from this part of the world. I mean, in the last year alone, there have been so many shows at museums across the globe, from Walid Raed at the Museum of Modern Art, to Wael Shawki at MoMA PS1, Khalil Jurej and Joanna Hajitouma at MIT, Emily Jasser at the Whitechapel. Curators are coming here.
Even before I started my work with Art Basel, Art Basel had a very, kind of open mind to things like Art Dubai. I mean, Art Dubai has been a catalyst, has been an instigator, has been a cultivator in so many ways of what's happening in the rest of the region.
When I started teaching at university level courses on contemporary modern Middle Eastern art, most museums hadn't really started to develop their collections. So the art fairs and the galleries were really at the frontier of helping me develop material to teach my students. And Art Dubai has always been very intriguing to my students in the States. It's got a very important educational role to play, Art Dubai in particular, but the entire gallery scene, in kind of developing the field of contemporary Middle Eastern art.
So in 2008, I have to be honest, the art scene was not much developed, and so I noticed that in these 8 years now, 9 years almost, the scene have grown dramatically. So I think we are doing quite well because we are producing exhibitions. We are trying to produce art exhibitions. Really lacking is art criticism.
As someone who has advised Sheikh Zayed on his art collection for many, many, many years, and also someone who's lived in the region for 20 years, how have you seen the Middle Eastern art scene develop?
Actually, I've been here for such a long time. When I first came, there was very little happening. And then when the capital decided to establish the museums, the Louvre, the Guggenheim, the Sheikh Zayed National Museum, it's going to be quite tremendous. Art is really in the eye of the beholder. What's beautiful in Asia, what's beautiful in Europe, you can see it here at the exhibition.
How do you feel that the opening of the Tehran scene is changing or will change the Middle Eastern art scene?
Well, let's put all of that into retrospective. It's like it has a positive and it has a negative effect in the way that are they there to see Farid al-Lashayi or are they there to see the collection, which is really a Western collection? Because the artist wants to be shown in major museums, wants to be understood by curators that are their education and the background is mainly Western, and they have to understand it within the context of Western art history or the languages that they are familiar with, the artist changes his language. Iran generally opening up, I think it will affect the status that the arts that are in the periphery or are in the Middle East in this specific occasion, it will affect that and it will elevate the status of how this art is perceived because there's a lot of history.